There are moments in life when everything feels quiet, but not in a peaceful way. It's the kind of silence that aches, a silence that leaves you staring into space, wondering if anyone or anything is really listening. Maybe you've been there. Maybe you're there right now. That subtle, nagging sense of spiritual disconnection, like you're knocking on a door that never opens. And yet, what if that silence wasn't absence? What if it was the universe waiting for you to notice its presence? Joe Dispenza teaches us that our thoughts and emotions aren't just internal, they're electromagnetic signatures that shape the quantum field around us. In other words, what you feel becomes your signal to the universe. But what most people don't realize is that the universe is also signaling back, constantly, gently, precisely. And the tragedy is that so many of us have been trained to ignore these whispers. We've been taught to chase results, not resonance. We've been conditioned to look for proof, not presence. Napoleon Hill once wrote that every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. But that seed only germinates when you're tuned into a frequency higher than fear, when you begin to notice not what's wrong, but what's being revealed. The universe doesn't shout, it murmurs, it offers breadcrumbs, a sudden thought, a repeated symbol, a door that closes only so that another may open. These are not coincidences, they are coordinates, sent from the deepest intelligence that orchestrates your life. And that brings us to the truth of this video. If you're receiving certain signs, subtle, recurring, soul-stirring signs, then you are not disconnected. In fact, you're in perfect resonance with a force that is ancient, loving, and infinitely wise. This isn't about magic. It's about magnetism, about your ability to match your internal world with a larger universal rhythm that's already playing the music of your becoming. In the chapters that follow, you will discover the 5 core signs that indicate you are no longer lost in the noise, but finally aligned with the symphony of the cosmos. These aren't generic ideas or mystical abstractions. They are practical, emotional, spiritual experiences rooted in the science of energy and the psychology of transformation. We'll dive deep into the silence, the synchronicities, the energetic shifts, the emotional releases, and the closing of old cycles that make way for something greater. So as you continue watching, I invite you to do more than just listen. I invite you to remember, to reawaken a knowing that's already inside you, and to trust that if these signs are appearing, it's not by chance, it's because the universe is speaking. And now, you are finally ready to hear. Let's begin. The message beneath the inner silence. There is a specific kind of silence that doesn't arrive from peace but from pause, a silence that surfaces not in meditation but in moments of strange stillness, those afternoons when nothing seems to move, when familiar voices fall quiet, when life no longer responds the way it used to. For many, this silence feels like abandonment. But for the few who are paying attention, it is the universe clearing space, making room for a deeper signal to emerge. What seems like absence is often the beginning of spiritual resonance. The human mind has been conditioned to associate progress with noise, conversations, plans, confirmations, movement. When these things fade, we interpret the gap as a problem. But silence, in the spiritual realm, is not a void. It is the field. Joe Dispenza describes the quantum field as a space of infinite potential, accessed not through thinking harder, but through surrendering deeper. And that surrender often begins when everything else gets quiet. The silence you feel is not empty. It is a waiting room between the life you've known and the one that's about to unfold. One of the first signs that you are in tune with the universe is the presence of inner silence that doesn't create panic. It might still feel uncomfortable, especially if you've used busyness to avoid self-confrontation, but this silence begins to feel like a soft invitation rather than a punishment. Your body stops rushing. Your thoughts lose their urgency. Your desire for answers turns into an openness to receive. In this stillness, your nervous system recalibrates. Your intuition begins to whisper again. And most importantly, your ego loses its grip, because the need to control fades in the presence of something greater. What's rarely talked about is how this silence can also bring grief. The shedding of old selves, outdated goals, misaligned dreams. When the soul begins to remember its frequency, the personality often resists. This conflict can manifest as fatigue, a sense of confusion, or a longing for something unnamed. But these are not signs of regression. They are echoes of recalibration. The death of egoic momentum is necessary for the emergence of aligned direction. Neuroscience now shows that during moments of deep silence, the brain enters alpha and theta states, associated with creativity, healing, and spiritual insight. In these states, you're more connected to your subconscious and to what Carl Jung referred to as the collective unconscious, the shared psychic reservoir that connects all of us. It's here, in this field, that ideas emerge without force, clarity arrives without logic, and energy reorganizes without effort. Silence isn't passivity, it's alignment, a returning to your natural energetic posture. But this internal stillness is not easy to trust, especially when the world equates visibility with value. You may feel the urge to fill it with distractions, affirmations, productivity, but the universe operates differently. It often withdraws external stimulation precisely to strengthen your inner perception. Like the moment before dawn or the inhale before music begins, silence is not the end. It's a preparation. It's how the universe ensures you're listening from the right place, your essence, not your ego. There is a paradox here. The more deeply you listen, the less you need to ask. When you truly enter the silence, questions dissolve, not because they were answered, but because they were never needed. The feeling of disconnection fades, not because anything changed externally, but because you remembered how to feel from the inside. This is why so many spiritual traditions, ancient and modern, prioritize the void, the pause, the still point. It's not to remove you from life, it's to return you to it with new eyes. Yet it is also in this space that resistance surfaces. The subconscious will present its fears. You're falling behind. Nothing is happening. You should be doing more. But when these voices arise, see them not as warnings, but as tests. They are the guardians of transformation, designed to see if you can hold your center even when logic screams otherwise. If you can remain in the silence long enough, a shift begins. Subtle at first. You start to feel your own presence more than your thoughts. You begin to sense a deeper order in apparent chaos. You catch glimpses of meaning in randomness, and what once felt like isolation begins to feel like sacred solitude. One day you wake up and realize that you no longer need the noise to feel alive. You no longer crave the chase, the validation, the urgent striving. You're not giving up. You're tuning in, and from this still place things begin to unfold, not with effort, but with ease. Opportunities that once seemed distant begin appearing organically. Conversations shift. People respond differently. Synchronicities increase. But you don't rush to analyze them. You receive them. Because you've learned that silence was never a void. It was your soul's doorway to the infinite. In the end, this sign, the emergence of meaningful inner silence, is not an endpoint. It's a frequency, a way of being that allows you to hear the subtle music playing beneath the chaos of the world. It is the moment the universe knows you're finally listening with your whole being. And when you listen that way, you don't just hear. You remember, you realign, and you begin. Repeated coincidences are not accidents. There is something strange about the way certain things return, a phrase you overhear twice in the same day, a book that keeps appearing in your recommended feed, a number that shows up on receipts, clocks, and addresses. At first you dismiss it. Coincidence, you tell yourself, but then it happens again and again, until you can no longer pretend it's meaningless. There comes a moment when repetition begins to feel less like randomness and more like a rhythm, a pattern, a message. These moments, what Carl Jung described as synchronicities, are not trivial events. They are cracks in the illusion of separateness. They are the language of the unseen. In a world governed by logic, repetition without explanation feels unsettling. But in a universe governed by resonance, repeated experiences are confirmations of alignment. They indicate that your inner world and the external world are no longer in conflict. They're beginning to speak the same language. The irony is that many people pray for signs while simultaneously dismissing the very signs they receive. They expect the universe to deliver its messages wrapped in thunder and clarity, when in truth the divine prefers subtleties. It prefers nudges, symbols, whispers. And one of the most profound indicators that you're in sync with that divine rhythm is the recurrence of meaningful events that seem orchestrated rather than accidental. These signs often begin small. A song plays at just the right moment. Someone mentions an idea you were quietly contemplating. You think of a person and they call. You feel drawn to a place only to discover something essential waiting for you there. When these moments repeat, not just once but over time, they form a kind of map, a sacred breadcrumb trail leading you deeper into your purpose, and the more you follow them, the clearer your path becomes. Joe Dispenza explains that when our thoughts, emotions, and intentions are coherent, we begin to influence the quantum field in ways that attract experiences matching our internal state. This is not magical thinking, it's energetic coherence. Our brain and heart in sync emit a frequency that invites mirrored responses from reality itself. Repeated coincidences are often the universe's way of saying, yes, you're on the right path, keep going. But only those willing to look beneath the surface will recognize the message within the repetition. Still, this experience can create discomfort. The rational mind is deeply allergic to uncertainty, and synchronicities disrupt the illusion of control. If life is random, then it's predictable. But if life responds to us, if it reflects us, then we must confront a deeper responsibility. We are not just observers, we are participants, co-creators, and this means that every pattern carries weight. Every signal has significance, not because life is trying to trick us, but because it's trying to teach us how to see. What makes this even more challenging is that not all repeated signs come with immediate clarity. Some leave you in a state of emotional suspension, aware that something meaningful is happening, but unsure of what it means. This ambiguity is part of the design. The universe does not always send instructions. It sends invitations. The repetition is not a demand. It is a doorway. You're not meant to figure it all out. You're meant to step through the door and allow meaning to unfold over time. Many people make the mistake of ignoring signs because they don't match their expectations. They're waiting for a specific outcome, and if the signs point elsewhere, they dismiss them. But the deeper truth is that synchronicity does not obey the ego's timeline. It obeys the soul's curriculum, which means that what's repeating may not be what you want, but it may be exactly what you need. In some cases, the repetition will feel like warning, a toxic dynamic that keeps appearing in different relationships, a recurring obstacle in your career, a pattern of self-abandonment that surfaces in moments of fear. These are not punishments, they are mirrors. And when you're truly in tune with the universe, you begin to see that synchronicity is not always comfortable. It's corrective. It's the soul adjusting your trajectory with precision, even when your mind resists the new direction. Over time, those who pay attention begin to live differently. They speak with more reverence. They move with more intention. They stop asking for signs and start living as if every moment contains one. Their lives become less about strategy and more about sensitivity, less about performance and more about presence. This doesn't mean abandoning logic. It means honoring intuition as its equal, because when the same signal repeats and you're awake enough to notice, you realize something is reaching out to you. Something knows your name. And in that realization, fear loosens. Not because you've solved everything, but because you've remembered you're not alone. The universe is not a distant force dispensing luck from a throne of randomness. It is a living field, pulsing with awareness, responding to your energy, reflecting your growth. When signs repeat, it's not because life is a puzzle to solve. It's because you've entered a dialogue, one that does not always speak in words, but always speaks in truth. The invitation is not to become obsessed with interpretation. The invitation is to cultivate awareness, to live with your senses tuned to the subtle, to recognize that behind every pattern lies presence, that each repeated moment is a sacred echo, and that perhaps the universe is less interested in proving something to you and more interested in walking beside you again and again until you remember how to listen. The body becomes the antenna. There comes a moment when the body starts responding to something that the mind has not yet understood, a sudden chill without a breeze, a deep exhale that arrives uninvited, a subtle sensation in the chest as someone speaks, or an unexplained heaviness in the stomach when you consider a decision. These sensations are not random, they are responses. They are how the soul communicates through the nervous system, when language fails and logic resists. In spiritual traditions across time, the body has always been seen as a sacred instrument, not just a vehicle for experience, but a receptor of energy, intuition, and divine intelligence. Joe Dispenza reminds us that the body holds memories the mind has long forgotten. It stores trauma, yes, but it also stores wisdom. When you begin to align with the frequency of the universe, the body doesn't just heal, it listens, it translates, it warns, it confirms. The modern world trains us to override the body's intelligence. Productivity is valued over presence, achievement over attunement. We are taught to suppress symptoms, dismiss signals, and numb sensations. But when you begin to return to your natural energetic state, one of the most unmistakable signs is that your body becomes more sensitive, not weaker, but wiser. It reacts not just to food or sleep, but to energy, spaces, people, and thoughts. You become aware of how your body contracts or expands around truth. This sensitivity can be unsettling at first. Things that once felt fine may now feel unbearable. Crowded rooms, shallow conversations, toxic dynamics. You feel them now, not just intellectually, but physically. You walk into a place and your chest tightens. You meet someone and your skin itches with invisible friction. These are not overreactions. They are recalibrations. Your body is no longer operating from survival. It is responding from resonance. As your internal frequency rises, your body becomes a more precise antenna. This means that you will also begin to feel the dissonance more acutely. What once numbed you now agitates you. What once entertained you now exhausts you. This is not regression, this is alignment. You are no longer tolerating what your soul has already outgrown. Science offers its own validation. The vagus nerve, which connects the brain to the heart, lungs, and gut, is a critical part of our parasympathetic nervous system. It plays a major role in how we process intuition, regulate emotion, and connect with others. When we are in alignment, when we feel safe, seen, and in tune, this system activates, allowing the body to enter a state of receptivity. In these states, we don't just think more clearly, we receive more purely. The challenge is that many of us have learned to distrust the body, especially if it has carried pain, disease, or trauma. We associate it with limitation, but the truth is that the body is not your enemy, it is your compass. And when the universe begins to speak, it often uses the body first. Before a decision becomes clear, you feel tension. Before a new opportunity appears, you feel excitement. Before a chapter ends, you feel drained. And in all these moments, the body is not guessing. It's translating energy into sensation. Gregg Braden has spoken about the intelligence of the heart, how it contains its own neural network, capable of memory, learning, and communication. When you begin to live in resonance with your heart field, your body becomes less reactive and more responsive. You stop living from stress. You begin living from coherence. And in coherence, you don't just survive, you receive. This does not mean that every bodily sensation is a divine message, but it does mean that the more in tune you become, the more your body filters information accurately. It becomes your guide, your ally, your barometer. And in many cases, it will feel before you know. That deep peace you feel in a place you've never been. That nausea when considering a perfectly logical option. That electric shiver when you speak the truth aloud. These are signals, not symptoms. What's important to understand is that this sensitivity is not fragility. It's power. True spiritual alignment does not make you more delicate. It makes you more discerning. You begin to trust your own signals more than external opinions. You move not because someone told you to, but because something inside you shifted. And when people ask how you knew, it's hard to explain because you didn't think it. You felt it and you listened. But this listening requires unlearning. It means re-establishing a relationship with your body that is based on reverence, not rejection. It means acknowledging the years you spent ignoring it, numbing it, rushing it, and then, softly, it means choosing to tune in again, not as punishment, but as an act of deep spiritual trust. The body remembers the moments you didn't listen, the times you said yes while your gut screamed no, the times you stayed while your chest tightened in protest, the times you silenced the tremor in your voice because it wasn't rational. But as you begin to heal, you also begin to hear. And what you hear is a language older than words, a pulse beneath your skin, a whisper between your ribs, a knowing. In this state, manifestation is no longer a mental exercise, it becomes embodied. You don't just visualize abundance, you feel what life feels like when you're abundant. You don't just affirm love, you vibrate in a way that draws love to you. because your body, now coherent and clear, becomes the transmitter, and the universe, in response, becomes the mirror. Ultimately, the body is not just a container, it is a conduit. And when it begins to respond in ways that bypass the mind, that's not dysfunction, that's direction, that's resonance. That's the sign that you're no longer asking for signs, you're becoming one, a living signal, a walking antenna, a body in tune with the symphony of the universe. When life closes a cycle, without force, there is a quiet elegance in how certain chapters end, not with chaos or conflict, but with an unmistakable sense of completion. Something you once clung to simply fades, a desire dissolves, a relationship no longer stirs resentment. A place you once feared returning to feels neutral now, maybe even sacred. There's no need for confrontation, no dramatic goodbye, just an inner clarity that says, this is no longer yours. When you feel this, you are not unraveling, you are aligning. This is one of the most overlooked signs that your frequency is rising, when cycles close on their own, without resistance, without drama. We often associate endings with effort, that in order for something to be over, we must fight, push, declare. But the universe doesn't operate on the terms of the ego. It flows on the law of energetic coherence. When something is no longer in resonance with your evolved self, it cannot remain. The thread dissolves naturally, because the frequency that once sustained it no longer exists. Joe Dispenza describes this process as neurological pruning. When new beliefs are installed, old neural pathways literally wither away from disuse. And what occurs in the brain reflects what occurs in your reality. People, habits, situations that once defined you begin to fade, not because you force them to leave, but because your energy no longer feeds them. This process often brings confusion. After all, you've been conditioned to believe that growth is loud, intense, disruptive, but true transformation is frequently invisible. You stop reacting the way you used to. You no longer engage the same arguments. The same drama fails to seduce you. It feels strange at first, almost like disconnection, but in truth it is sovereignty, a new kind of stillness, a sacred detachment that comes not from indifference, but from healing. The endings come gently now. A job opportunity you once prayed for passes, and you feel relief instead of disappointment. A person ghosts you, and rather than spiraling, you feel gratitude for the space it creates. You begin to recognize that you are no longer trying to fix what life is asking you to release. And this shift is not weakness, it is mastery. The kind of mastery that only arises when you've stopped confusing struggle with purpose. Carl Jung once said that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is the essence of energetic cycles. Until you become aware of the frequency you've been emitting, you'll repeat the same patterns. But once you shift, truly shift, life responds. Not because you finally deserve better, but because you finally allow better. And that allowing is not an intellectual decision, it's vibrational. Your yes becomes sacred, your no becomes clear, and the universe honors both. Still, this natural closure can be disorienting. Who are you without the story of pain? Who are you without the need to fix, to prove, to chase? When the noise quiets, the silence can feel like loss. But stay there. Let the unfamiliarity settle. Because what's dying is not your truth, it's your identity. The version of you that was born from survival, from needing to be chosen, from believing that effort was love. When those identities fall away, grief is inevitable. But what follows is grace. And grace doesn't need announcements. It doesn't ask for applause. It simply arrives, sometimes disguised as disinterest, sometimes as fatigue, sometimes as a subtle change in taste, rhythm, routine. You stop craving what once distracted you. You start hearing yourself more clearly. You find joy in small sacred acts that once went unnoticed. Drinking water slowly, watching sunlight shift across the floor, taking a walk with no destination. These are not minor moments. They are proof that your nervous system is recalibrating to peace. In this state, manifestation takes on a new tone. No longer fueled by desperation or urgency, your desires become cleaner, lighter, more aligned. You're not asking the universe to fix your life. You're inviting it to co-create from a space of coherence. You begin to receive not because you begged, but because you stopped blocking. And perhaps most beautifully, You no longer confuse what is leaving with what is lacking. You understand that endings are offerings too. There may still be moments when you miss what you've released. That's human. You may revisit old messages, remember old dreams, wonder if you made the right choice. That's healing. But notice this. You don't spiral like you once did. You feel it, you bless it, and you continue. This is how you know the cycle truly closed. Not because it ended in fire, but because it ended in freedom. And freedom, real freedom, is subtle. It doesn't always come with euphoria. Sometimes it feels like emptiness, like a room that has just been cleaned out. But in that emptiness, there is space. Space for breath. Space for presence. Space for the next version of you to emerge, not in panic but in peace. So if you find yourself in this strange in-between, where nothing feels wrong but everything feels different, don't rush to fill it. You're not behind. You're in the passage. And in the passage, life reshapes itself to match who you've become. You're not losing momentum. You're shedding identities. You're not stuck. You're integrating. And soon what's meant for you will find you. Not because you chased it, but because you became the person it was always seeking. This is how the universe speaks when you're aligned. Through natural closure, through effortless release, through a silence that signals readiness. And when you start noticing these endings without fear, it means you are no longer resisting the current. You are flowing with it. You are in tune. You are in trust. You are finally in rhythm with the deeper unfolding of your life. There is a profound kind of peace that settles in once you realize you were never truly disconnected. That every silence, every repetition, every bodily sensation, every quiet ending was a conversation in disguise, a sacred dialogue between your soul and the universe. The signs were never meant to impress you. They were designed to awaken you, to pull you out of noise, out of numbness, out of the illusion that you must earn your place in the unfolding of your own life. As you begin to recognize these signs, you stop searching for proof and start listening with presence. You stop demanding answers and begin feeling alignment. Joe Dispenza teaches that when the heart and mind are in coherence, the electromagnetic field you emit becomes a magnet for the life that already belongs to you. Not the life your ego planned, but the one your soul remembers. And the signs are the echoes of that remembering. Neville Goddard said, "You are already that which you seek." And when you finally believe it, not in your thoughts but in your vibration, life begins to meet you there. The signs aren't separate from the destination. They are the path itself. The way life confirms that you are not abandoned, not late, not broken, but becoming. If you are seeing these signs, it means you are already shifting. You are no longer moving from lack, but from listening. You're no longer chasing the light. You are realizing that you are the light, and that the universe has been echoing that truth back to you in 1,000 subtle ways. Now the question is no longer, is the universe listening to me? The real question is, are you finally listening to it? Have you noticed any of these signs in your own life lately? Signs that something deeper is trying to reach you, guide you, realign you? If what you heard today resonated with your heart, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. This space is here for you, to awaken, to remember, to transform. And there's more waiting for you right now. Continue your journey by watching the next video appearing on your screen. It's not there by chance. Nothing is.